Welcome to the ArmaniTalks YouTube channel. I'm your host, ArmaniTalks. In this channel, I'm helping you level up your communication skills. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about how to deal with confrontation. Confrontation is one of those things that no one really likes. Yet, when you're leveling up in a certain field, you got to learn how to deal with it. There's this very famous debater who has extremely polarizing opinions. And every time that he's stepping into a certain debate, he is consistently getting attacked. They're calling him names, they're raising their voice at him, and they're consistently throwing him under the bus. A part of me sometimes thinks that this guy, he likes confrontation. He enjoys it. Otherwise, why would you consistently find yourself in these positions? Well, one day there was an interviewer who asked this debater, "Do you like confrontation?" Because I haven't seen too many people who are able to maintain such great composure under the heat. And this debater gives a very honest response. He says, "No, I don't like confrontation. Actually, after each of these debates, I need a couple of days to a couple of weeks to recharge for the next debate. But I deal with the confrontation, the heat, because I believe in my ideas. And if I want to move the needle forward, then I'm going to have to learn how to deal with the heat." Like I said, this is one of those situations where someone doesn't like confrontation, but due to leveling up in their field, they have to learn how to deal with it. Question is, how do we deal with it? Well, we could learn from real world individuals, or we could learn from fictional characters. And in context of my life, for some reason, I've really enjoyed learning from fictional characters. One character being Gopal. Who? Gopal. Gopal is an extremely popular fictional character in Bangladesh who is the reason that a lot of young kids in Bangladesh learn meaningful life lessons. Well, when my grandma was moving from Bangladesh to the US for a certain period, she bought a whole bunch of stories of Gopal to the US, and she would share these stories with my brother and I. Gopal was the king of dealing with confrontation. In this episode, I'm going to be sharing one of these stories, and we're going to unpack how he dealt with confrontation so brilliantly. And these lessons we can beautifully apply in context to our life as well. So let's get started with the story. But before we do, be sure to drop that like for me right on below. Gopal lived in a village, and there were many villages in a part of this kingdom. There was a king that ruled the kingdom, and one day this king had a newborn son. He was so proud of this newborn son that he wanted the other villagers to see his child and basically hype him up, give him a pat on the back. So one day, he threw a big event where a bunch of the villagers had the chance to come into the castle and see the newborn child. Well, a bunch of the villagers came and they were all kissing the king's butt. One of them said, "King, your baby is so handsome. I know he's just a baby, but he's going to be handsome like his father." Another villager said, "King, your baby looks like an angel sent from the heavens." And all these individuals are taking their turn talking up the baby. The king notices that Gopal, he's pretty quiet and he looks like he's observing something. So he calls out Gopal, "Hey, you haven't said anything about my baby. Go on, say something." So at that point, Gopal thought about it for a second and he responds back, "King, the joy that you feel around your newborn is the same exact joy that I feel while pooping after a very, very long day." When he said this, the whole room went silent. They were shocked. The king heard these words and yelled at Gopal, "Did you just compare my newborn son to you taking a dump? I should kill you. You know what? I am going to kill you. Guards, get him. There's a bunch of guards that surround Gopal and they're about to slice his neck. Gopal is dealing with confrontation and he needs to deal with it correctly. Gopal calls to the king, King, don't take my life. What I said was actually supposed to be perceived as a compliment, not an insult. The king said, no, man. You just compared my son to you taking a dump. I don't know how you can make up for this. Gopal said, how about this? Just give me 1 day with you tomorrow. Just 1 day, and I will prove to you what I said was actually a compliment, not an insult. This piqued the king's curiosity, and he thought, okay, you have 1 day to prove to me how what you said should be perceived in a positive manner, and your life will be saved. But if you don't, you are done. The next day, Gopal prepares a feast. He makes lamb, chicken, rice, eggs, a feast, like I just said. And the king comes over. The king eats the food with Gopal. They exchange stories. They drink tea. They're basically bonding. Once they're wrapping up, Gopal says to the king, all right, king, now we are going to take a tour in the mystical lakes of Bangladesh. This hyped up the king because yes, the king was the ruler of the kingdom, but he didn't really leave his castle too much. So today was sort of like his day off. Well, he gets onto Gopal's boat and now they're sailing around the beautiful lakes of Bangladesh. This tour was supposed to last for a couple of hours. Well, the king is enjoying the scene, but as 1 hour passes by, the food that he had just eaten had gotten digested, and he asks Gopal, hey Gopal, I'm really enjoying the tour and all, but is there a restroom around here? I really got to use a restroom. Gopal says, no, king, you're going to have to wait until we get back in a couple of hours because there's no restroom in sight. And the king is a proud man. Obviously, he's not going to take a dump in Gopal's boat. So he says, okay, fine. I could hold on to it. They're spending more time taking the tour. Another hour goes by. And at this point, the king is really struggling. He doesn't know how much longer he could hold on to it. So he's like, Gopal, man, is there any place we could use the restroom real quick? I really need to go. Gopal says, no, man, you're going to have to wait a couple of hours. And then the king, he sees an island. Hey, what about that island? Let's go there. Gopal tells the king, you don't want to go to that island. Why not? Because that island has a lot of poisonous snakes. If we even pull up 5 feet close to it, a lot of the snakes are going to jump into our boat. You don't want to deal with that. The king was terrified of snakes, so he said, all right, just wrap up this tour, okay? Because I really got to use the restroom. So the tour is still going on, and another hour passes by, and the king really needs to go. He sees another island. Hey, Gopal, what about that island? Gopal says, you really don't want to go to that island. Man, why not? Well, that island has a lot of wild baboons, a lot of deadly monkeys. You don't want to deal with that. The king also feared baboons and monkeys. So he's like, okay, I guess I could wait. I guess I could hold on to it. Another hour goes by, and at this point, the king doesn't know what he's going to do. He's like, Gopal, please, can you please find a restroom that I could go to? I don't know how much I could hold on to it. Please. Gopal looks back at the king. You really need to go? Yes, I really need to go. All right, king, there's actually a secret island that I'll take you to. It's just going to take 5 minutes. So 5 minutes later, he finally takes the king onto the secret island. The king takes care of business, and he comes walking back like he's 10 pounds lighter. And he looks at Gopal and says, "Thank you." Gopal asks him, "How did that feel?" And the king responds back saying, "Gopal, you don't know how good it felt pooping after such a long, long day." And just like that, the insight clicked in the king's mind. And he looked back at Gopal and said, "Congratulations, you just saved your life." This was a brilliant situation by Gopal because he did so many things right. What exactly did he do right? Well, the very first point that we want to understand is that Gopal really did have to deal with a confrontation. What? You're saying I normally don't have to really deal with a confrontation? That's correct. In a lot of situations, we're not really dealing with confrontations. What we're actually dealing with is poor tonalities. When someone is doing a very harsh tonality, we perceive it as a confrontation. In Gopal's case, the dude was gonna die. While in our case, for a lot of situations, not all, but plenty, it's actually a situation of poor tonality. And in this situation, we just have to understand that a lot of humans, they don't understand the importance of tonality. If you go to them and you say, "Hey, do you know that words only make up 3% of a meaningful communication? Most of it is body language and tonality." They look at you like, "Huh?" Which is why when someone disagrees or someone is coming at us, the first thing to often go is their tonality. Even if they don't mean any harm, their tonality may come off as harm, which may cause us to perceive a confrontation when it's not really there. So that's the first lesson that we should learn from Gopal's story. This guy was in a legit confrontation, while in our situation, we have to really perceive it as how dangerous is it really? Then the next point with Gopal was that he never really personalized it. He understood that the language that he used was unfortunately not taken in the right context by the king. And what he was able to do was he was able to maintain composure. He took a couple of breaths, I'm assuming, and he was able to speak the language of the king. This is another thing that we can do in context to our life, where when there is a confrontation that's going on, it's not brute force and facts that win. It's actually a sense of understanding the other person's language. That's what it really comes down to. How does the saying go? You can attract more flies with honey rather than vinegar. And this is a situation where empathy can actually make us fear less, while the ego makes us fearful. So Gopal was able to maintain a high level of empathy despite his life almost being taken. And this is something that we can apply to our lives as well, where when confrontation is being met, rather than fighting back with them immediately, let's learn how to speak their language. And then the third thing that Gopal was able to do was that he was capable of using real world examples. Although he didn't use these examples in terms of like the word format, he was capable of showing examples. In context of our life, a lot of these confrontations that we deal with, we have to be able to articulate it. Maybe we cannot just take someone on a boat trip randomly and prepare a feast for them, which is why storytelling and providing real world examples that speak to their language is crucial. So these are a few ways to deal with confrontation. It comes down to empathy. It comes down to really understanding if we're in a confrontation or if we're just misaligning the tonality with confrontation. And it comes down to giving examples. But what Gopal's story did not mention, which is highly important, is that one of the best ways to deal with confrontation is to learn the art of ignoring, the art of opting out. There's a poor narrative out there which states that, oh, well, if you don't deal with confrontation, each confrontation that's thrown your way, then you're a coward. While in the digital age, this is a very misguided narrative. A lot of individuals nowadays, their main business plan is to attack accounts much bigger than them to get clout, to get the bigger account to respond back to them so they get new followers, new impressions, new clicks and all that stuff, while this guy gets nothing. This guy thought, oh, well, if I don't respond back, then I'm a coward. But he fell for the poor narrative. In the real world, Gopal had to deal with this individual because this king was in a much higher position than him and he didn't have the chance to opt out. But in a lot of parts of our lives, we do have the chance to opt out, especially with a lot of these clowns nowadays who go out of their way to build a business plan off attacking others. So that's the final tip. Feel free to opt out if you need to opt out, because this surprisingly strengthens the thick skin for the future, and this thick skin allows us to empathize further for real world confrontations. Like I said in the beginning of this video, no one really likes to deal with confrontations. However, as we scale up in a certain field, as we try to level up in any field, especially a field that requires creativity, we got to deal with confrontation every now and then. So in situations like this, make sure that you're classifying the confrontation correctly, empathize by speaking their language, and do your best to provide examples. If there's no need to respond back to them, then gladly ignore. Your time you never get back, so guard the time and use the lessons that Gopal was able to exhibit with the king that day. Thank you for joining the ArmaniTalks YouTube channel, and I'll catch you on the next episode.